It's December 11th, 2014. And I was just thinking I should probably add a couple of things just quickly before going to the next discussion, which I will try to get to tomorrow. One of those things is that the FBI did not just interrogate me. It is probably important to mention that they then took one of the Bob Juniors that was there, and they took the Dicksie that was there, and they took them into a back room and they interrogated them for hours. And didn't always sound very pleasant. They, I think they maybe possibly one of them thought that that they had let me pick up the phone, or that someone encouraged me or told me, or somehow that I knew, and I didn't. Nobody said anything or gave any unusual idea about it. I mean, my assessment of taking that call was not even just from the one day. It was built up over time because of things that I had said or that I had overheard from a number of government people in different locations. So, but I remember that when one of the Dicksies came out of this bedroom after they'd been there, she looked like a wreck. She did not look like she'd been having fun in there with them. And it was a little odd because they just went in there for a couple of hours and didn't come out. And they did the same thing to one of the Bob Juniors. But I don't remember exactly what he looked like when he came out of the room specifically. I just kind of more remember this one Dicksie. And she looked kind of scared and nervous, maybe. But I wasn't sure what they'd been doing in that room aside from, well, if they interrogated me, they probably were doing the same thing to them. But sometimes it was extremely quiet in there. Like it just, you know, I didn't even hear people talking. And I thought, this is just really weird. So, I would say overall, the total amount of time that they were there at that house, that one time that they showed up, was for maybe like 4 to 5 hours. It's a long time. It took up an entire part of the day. So that's one thing that I should mention. The other thing is regarding the check writing. Some of the teachers were saying, take this to Joy, or this is for Joy. And they kept mentioning the name Joy. There were 2 different Joys that I knew about. One was Joy Sullen Myers, who was the daughter of Barbara and I guess Joe Sullen. But her sort of adoptive dad or stepdad is Pamp Myers. Or John Sullen, maybe? Not Joe, sorry. But so I knew about her. She was a frequent name that came up. But also there was Joy Sterling Tanzer. And Joy, I knew of Joy as a banker. I always thought of her as a banker, rather than, I mean, she had a winery. Her family did. But I hardly ever thought about them in a winery context, or as winery owners. I always thought about her as a banker. And so, and later, you know, I asked someone, I said, is their family connected to Sterling Bank, Sterling Savings or whatever? And people have always, my entire life, said no, that they're not. But I always wondered because Sterling was her maiden name. And I believed that, I thought she was some sort of a banker because she had briefcases of money around all the time. So I did think, and I also actually knew her when she was a journalist, or when she had just gotten out of journalism, because for a short time, or who knows how long of a time, but at least when I knew her, she was a little bit into journalism or knew some people in the media. But the whole winery business that they had was really sort of like something maybe I thought they did as a hobby. I had no idea that that was their job, or that was their main supposed source of income at all. And that's not the context in which it placed me, even though I later, I had visited them at that location and everything. And so anyway, the other thing that I wanted to mention was that after I got off the phone, and my parents were upset, I had my ear like almost just burning up to where I literally dropped the phone to the ground because it was so hot, and there was nothing that could have caused that other than military technology of some sort. And the military was doing all kinds of bizarre things. I mean, like, our house was on their radar. So if they used some kind of satellite technology to specifically aim at the telephone, even though that sounds really weird or crazy almost, it's possible. Because whatever they did something that that caused the phone to do that. And whatever technology it was, it didn't seem to be that hard for them to do it. So it started up probably just, several minutes, a couple minutes after I was on the phone. I think maybe some people thought I assumed that I was going to turn the phone over to an adult, because I always did. Never ever took a risk of getting in trouble by lying and pretending to be my parents in front of them. So, so somehow, like, the government, I think, had my house bugged already, or hidden cameras, and I think someone who was watching in knew that I hadn't turned it over, and they realized that I was obtaining this information, and someone targeted the phone, and how they did that fast would indicate to me, as I say, that we were on their radar. I also kind of wondered, did this Bob Jr. have something in his hand that he aimed at it or whatever, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, he didn't know I was going to grab the phone. And I mean, why would he do that? It's more like a government thing. And then, and I assumed that the phone started burning because I had picked it up. I mean, maybe they did that to one of the Bob or Dixies sometimes too, but I don't think so. But I can't say that that's impossible. So then after that happened, and I dropped the phone, I was sort of being slightly obnoxious. And because this government had just burned my ear, literally, I started singing "The Eye of the Tiger." I was so mad that they just done that to my ear. And so I thought, well, I'm going to sing "The Eye of the Tiger," and that'll really make someone mad. So I started singing as loud as I could, "The Eye of the Tiger," like I was the eye of the tiger, and I had gotten to that phone. Like bragging about intercepting this phone call when I already knew I was in trouble. But I think the reason I did it, I think, is because I was mad that I knew that someone in the government had just done that to my ear, And I thought, well, if they're spying on me, they can listen to this. So I started singing The Eye of the Tiger. And I actually think that my singing that led someone like the FBI and people in the government to think, why is she singing The Eye of the Tiger? Like, she still thinks she's PSI. You know, like government psychic worker who has second sight or has the eye and knew that we were going to be calling and talking about this. That wasn't why I sang the song at all. I sang it because they just tortured me to my ears, so I was talking about The Eye of the Tiger, and it was a popular song at that time. But when they showed up at my house, they kept querying me to find out. It was like they thought that I was still psychic, and they wanted to know if I was, and if that's why I had started singing that song. And they even asked me, "Why did you start singing this song?" And I actually had one of the Dixie that was there asked me why I was singing that. And she kind of said, how come you're singing that? Or what made you think of singing that song? And, you know, I was singing that after almost a year of intense torture by the United States government to target me and basically cripple my abilities so that I was not psychic anymore. And prior to that, they had used me for all kinds of government work, including remote viewing for them, and they had me run through a bunch of exercises. They did all kinds of tests on me, and I was gifted that way, and I wasn't by the time they had performed some extremely horrendous acts of crime against me. So anyway, I wanted to mention that is a song that I was singing just because the government knew about it, and I think that it led them to press me for even more information with their fear that maybe I was still somehow psychic, and that's why I was singing that song, and they didn't want me to be. So they wanted to make sure that was all in the past. And so those are a few important things that I wanted to add to what I was just mentioning.